Welcome back to the Techno-Communism Conversation. I'm Yohanan Ben Zion, voice crying in the wilderness, crying out for technological New Jerusalem. And I was thinking about an observation that has been on my mind for many, many decades, really. I did not, in the 1990s, know that LLMs would emerge, or machine learning would emerge as the means to building superintelligence in 2026. But I had some idea that perhaps 30 years hence such a thing would be built. And so it's been on my mind for a long time, a particular idea within these lines of thought, namely that, well, let's look at it from a little more of an illustrative kind of example. It's in the state of robotics eminently possible to have a little baby dragon, a Boston Dynamics type creature that would maybe look like something that you would imagine a dragon to look like, frolicking around in your house, behaving like a dog, so seeming to be your pet, something that you like. um, and the question that this relates to in my thinking of decades past is, why is there so much of a focus on, say, spending $300,000 for an individual to have a little baby dragon, and not, say, the far cheaper thing for you to have $300 for AR headset and interact with the same dragon, more impressive dragon, for virtually no cost, in this augmented reality space. And the answer is, of course, not that difficult to understand. For-profit organization like Boston Dynamics is not in the business of making things that are fun for you. They're in the business of making things that are fun for militaristic, warmongering baby killers. And this is true of basically all for-profit tech sectors, hence the title of this rather long title of this talk. And I'm going to contextualize this in hopefully in your thinking by criticism of a Western technology with a little bit of a focus on the Meta or Facebook organization and the Google organization, two military contractors of these failings that I've just described, worse than anyone, worse than Boston Dynamics, which is a small company, not massive surveillance companies pretending to be public utilities. So this is a critique of technocratic elitism and an analysis of advanced computing development trajectories. The overall technological revolution led by advanced computing has fundamentally altered the trajectory of human civilization. We'll put an asterisk by that, because not nearly so much as it should have, and by and large, this trajectory is being micromanaged by fascists to appear to be doing good things without actually doing them. Advanced computing's rapid development, however, does reflect, I think, what we could call a fairly inevitable historical technological determinism. Nothing is truly inevitable. We don't even know, for example, that the sun will absolutely rise tomorrow, and this is less so inevitable than that. but nevertheless, um, it's a fairly predictable thing. I might just as well have predicted 30 years ago, as I mentioned, that human beings would be extinct in 30 years. And based on the way things are going, that wouldn't have been too off the mark either. But that was a less likely outcome within that time frame in my mind. Getting back to the subject, as advanced computing becomes central to all economic systems, its power to shape our future, unfortunately, as I alluded to, falls disproportionately in the hands of highly fascistic and militaristic for-profit concerns and the political elites, and larger financial capital and imperial institutions that maintain them. This conversation explores a contrast between this omnicidal and badly malformed technocratic elitism, epitomized by companies like Google and Meta, and the cyberneticist, the true cyberneticist, the cybernetic socialist approach to advanced computing development. We want to, in this conversation, critically assess this dominant technocratic narrative and offer a counter-narrative of a more honest kind, rooted in revolutionary cybernetic socialism. This conversation also discusses policies and critiques institutions with an interest in implementing advanced computing more in the public interest, learning from historical experiments like Chile's Project Cybersyn, or writings on this subject like the Soviet Union's OGOSH. The Cybersyn was obviously a bit more realized. It was quite nearly a technological planned economy brought into existence in 1973 before the fascist United States and fascist West conspired to end the possibility of technological planned economies and installed a fascist dictatorship. Generally, historians and analysts of this kind focus on the socialistic tendencies of Chile besides the technological planned economy versus the fascist dictatorship of Pinochet, and sometimes in that focus whitewashing the United States and fascist West's role in the destruction of Chile, of Allende's Chile. But I am more inclined to think that this was a specifically a technologically motivated coup. And I say this, or reference Ogosh, cybernetics writing from the perspective of a planned economy, to all this to say that this already should have happened. If it were not for the fascistic United States and its disgusting Western allies, we would have already seen an AI takeoff of a very dramatic kind, including artificial and general intelligence being integrated into the commons, and institutions transitioning from the state socialist models of the 20th century into things approximating, if not meeting the level of full technological communism. It's important to point this out regularly because very few of us, all of us, myself included, really have the ability to imagine a different world than the one we live in. And so these crimes are almost by our nature ignored. But let us discuss this technocratic elitism and its effect on advanced computing development and society. How can you, as a revolutionary cybernetic socialist, um, study this? A good question. There's a tremendous amount of writing on these subjects. Um, and how can you, in studying this, work and unite with others to provide a more equitable, advanced computing based framework? What kinds of systems and institutions and policies could enable this alternative approach? We must have this kind of conversation because we have 5 years left before humans enter a different and more horrible phase in history, perhaps than any that has ever taken place. 2029 is the time when all climate scientists agree that we will have entered an era of irreversible runaway overheating from the poor use of industrial technology on the part of these private concerns. Capitalism's climate apocalypse. This is not a joke. And we could, in these 5 years, take steps to reverse this so that billions of people or all of humanity will not die in the decades to follow 2029. That requires an insurgency, a global insurgency, but particularly an insurgency in North America to end the United States military industrial complex, a $1 trillion a year abomination, which is the world's worst polluter, and whose only job on the world stage is to protect with extreme violence other super polluting private concerns. This is not a system that is sustainable, and it's not a system that can be altered even slightly without removing the fascist United States from the equation. And when we look at companies like Meta and Google, these are people who are doing exactly the opposite of that. And by and large, selling you snake oil about advanced computing ideas and developments that have nothing to do with that world of a true intelligence explosion that would have already occurred, I believe, around the year 2000. An overview of this technocratic elitism is not possible without discussing the emergence of neoliberal capitalism, monopoly capitalism, and the workings of financial capital. These are the emphasis on neoliberalism is sometimes a little bit reductive because monopoly capitalism and financial capitalism were already well understood to have more or less the same functioning by serious thinkers before this term, at around the time of the illegal sabotage of the Soviet Union. This term refers to the economic liberalization of a new kind, economic liberalization of a new kind in the wake of the fall of the so-called Second World Soviet Union and its allies. And this there's so capitalism has always been the problem, and anytime you put an asterisk by that and say, no, this is the problem is monopoly capitalism or the problem is crony capitalism, you're whitewashing the actual problem, which is just private wealth in the hands of elites. And but nevertheless, we have to be able to use a few words to talk about things rather than hundreds and hundreds every time they're referenced. So neoliberalism is a handy phrase. the um, let's look at these two most problematic of concerns and their areas of focus. Um, the Google organization has focused on building superintelligence or artificial general intelligence in the years since um, uh, for many years, but particularly in the years since Ray Kurzweil became the effective chief technology officer of that organization. Um, and similarly, they have focused on life extension in that time frame far more so. So we could look at organizations like their Calico project and the framing of aging as a technical problem. It's not a technical problem, right? For-profit concerns, like all of these that I mentioned, are allied with the for-profit death care system, the United States' lack of a public health service that kills 100,000 people a year in this COVID-19 era. New highs were hit today for COVID and infectious disease um, um, prevalence among the U.S. population, despite the fact that people are pretending this is no longer a problem. There's more infectious disease floating around now than ever before. Um, and this is all a part of the same problem, right? A world where your interests are not protected because only private wealth is prioritized in any sector. We can look at how this life extension as uh, a way of perhaps thinking about all of these problems is beyond problematic because this focus on life extension is really a focus on a world that serves the wealthy elites, ignoring the broader um, uh, economic structural determinants of health and happiness. There is no way of being honest and looking at the world without talking about material conditions and economic systems. An incredible sleight of hand that's done on the part of Western propaganda outlets and most Westerners, really, to pretend that none of that matters. On the other hand, we have the Facebook or Meta organization and their focus on virtual spaces, augmented and virtual reality, and how this push of the populace towards the metaverse also reflects a malformed uh, tech, technological utopianism and is in reality forcing people into a more commodified, neoliberal, and military friendly space. And we can also look at the threats to individual freedoms through this corporate control of these virtual spaces. Serious issues that are also too often downplayed, like the lack of data privacy and the surveillance state. Um, Advanced computing has emerged, and advanced technology then has emerged in the absence of this world where cybersyn was allowed to exist and flourish and inspire the world to build the kinds of conditions that would have allowed for people's AI takeoff in decades perhaps earlier instead of the bourgeois AI takeoff of today. So we can look at how advanced computing has been perverted and deployed in ways that benefit warmongers and corporations. And when people talk about the problem of algorithmic bias, for example, by and large, they're mincing experts, because they don't talk about these issues, talk about how to um, solve that problem within this fascistic framework rather than dismantling the fascistic framework. A recurring theme in your life, to be sure. And other things along these lines that are fundamentally misframed, like the automation of labor in the 21st century, or any other discussions of the exacerbation of social inequalities, always discussed by almost every Westerner and propaganda outlet in the context of how to fix those problems within the fascistic system. Which, just to be clear, so for example, the problem of people being unhoused. There, you could say by a certain estimate that 20% of the U.S. population is unstably housed. If they miss a paycheck, they will be living on the street. The official numbers are closer to 1 million for those living on the street or in a tent. Doesn't include people living out of their cars and couch surfing, or people like those I've just described. So the numbers actually dramatically undercounted, and also the actual numbers of people are pretty intentionally undercounted, of those living in tents and such. People, liberal dog shit human beings, people have no interest, capitalists of various kinds, conservatives are liberals too, really. They're all capitalists who have no interest in actually solving the problem, but will often wring their hands and say, how do we solve the problem of homelessness? This problem was solved a century ago. You have a housing authority that provides everyone with a home. And countries with far less resources at their disposal than the fascist United States have virtually no unhoused people to this day because of that principle. They have a housing authority that ensures that everyone has a home. Those people are not then degraded, but they are able to live indoors and able to pursue useful work as the things that perhaps would have otherwise disrupted their lives, even with a housing service, are dealt with, rather than this cascading set of problems that most people experience in the United States, resulting from missing one paycheck, things along those lines. This is the distillation of this problem of focusing not on material conditions or actual human beings, but on filthy lucre. This is a conversation, however, about the fundamental problem of technological utopianism as conceived by the Westerner. So we have to look at how these technocratic elites are framing advanced technology and advanced computing as a solution to all problems, but within that blindered, fascistic, Fisher's capitalist realist restrictive thinking, so that they're not able to actually say, well, why not just have a housing authority? Why not just have a public health service? Why not just have a jobs guarantee and do all of those things? Because that would be a socialist society and not a fascist society. But instead they say we'll solve the problems of climate change and inequality, but within this fascistic framework. It's utter nonsense, right? So there are serious risks, and in you going along with, and all of us placing faith in advanced technology under these fascistic institutions, without being able to address the underlying socioeconomic factors. I think I talked a little bit about this perhaps pivotal moment of Project Cybersyn in the development of cybernetic socialists, that like hundreds or thousands of such emerging institutions was sabotaged by the fascist West to prevent it from becoming something that would challenge the power of financial capital and empire. But we should also talk about cybernetics itself because true cybernetics, cybernetic socialism, was being developed by the mid 20th century in unique and astounding ways that would have allowed for representative control of institutions through advanced technology, dramatic opening up of access to knowledge, and the alignment of genuine technological progress with collective well-being rather than the degradation of profit seeking. I think CyberSyn itself, while not developed under an ideal scientific socialist state, it's pretty good. No, but no, it's not been an ideal socialist state thus far. Nothing close to it. But it's nevertheless an important counterpoint. It should be in your thinking for how technology could have been leveraged for representative governance and economic planning, and how that quite rudimentary telex machine based planned economy, had it been allowed to thrive, would have inspired the world to continue to build better and better systems along these lines. The successes and failures of Project CyberSyn, I think, give us insights into developing advanced computing systems right now within the revolutionary cybernetic socialist frameworks that I've tried to describe on this show. This includes the centrality of open source software in world affairs going forward, which would allow for dramatically improved worker participation in technologically based decision making and new governance structures, and the role of technology in fostering a different kind of society, a solidarity based society rather than a competition based society, a horror that people sometimes pretend is a positive thing. And sometimes, nearly every Western pig pretends this is the case. And it bears repeating because in this proliferation of intelligence, this intelligence explosion, even in this bourgeois intelligence explosion that we are experiencing, building that solidarity-based society in defiance of the competition-based society means embracing a thing that is orders of magnitude stronger. As I mentioned on this show, it's possible by the technology of the last quarter of this year to begin to build an open source, specially tailored, large language model, highly automated work group that would allow for the people within the work group to do relatively little, to merely basically respond to a few emails throughout the course of a day or week, but nevertheless would allow them to steer a thing that we could call a proxy hive mind, a thing that is able to do dramatically more work than the same number of individuals without this AI agentic mass at the center of it. This principle of greater returns for very little effort, it might allow you to go from being a freelancer making $20 an hour to $30 an hour, having little significance perhaps, that's to say, of geopolitical kind. But if we focus this on the collective, it becomes something truly transformative, and most significantly, in defiance of that so-called capitalist realist worldview, the more powerful thing, dramatically so. Um, and let's look at some of these trajectories of advanced computing and advanced technology development. The bourgeois AI takeoff of today, this perversion that I've described, the technocratic um, advanced computing development versus the cybernetic socialist advanced technology development. Um, we have to think of this, in my view, um, as something that is decentralized, perhaps more so than would have been necessary were it not for these fascistic saboteurs undermining this more centralized technological planned economy, and all such efforts of this kind on the behalf of state actors and such. Um, um, the sabotage is really the problem, and so the more decentralized effort is a strategic necessary rather than an ideological one for overcoming this problem. Um, they can't really destroy a decentralized project in the same way. It's would be, say, the difference between um, um, removing an ice cube from your iced tea, or separating the tea element from the water element. Okay? You can remove the ice cube, you can destroy the centralized blend economy, but the decentralized thing hosted on people's computers around the world, that's more like reversing the state of the thing, trying to filter pee out of the pool, so to speak. Or I want to refer to um, the cybernetic socialist as something like urine, but that's you can't get pee out of the pool, right? Once the pee's in the pool, it's there. The purpose of all of this, of course, is to help human beings and to be in a position to actually do that and not merely pay lip service to that, as people want to do. And so I think a good way to think about this is by thinking of advanced technology and advanced computing in terms of healthcare. And so, how advanced computing is used in healthcare under the bourgeois AI takeoff versus the people's AI takeoff is an important conversation to have. Um, in this technocratic system of the present day, the bourgeois AI takeoff, AI healthcare is allowing for greater profit seeking, not greater lifespan outcomes or wellness outcomes, and thus the focus on services for the wealthy that is at the center of the life extension community of the United States. Um, this farce of a thing, in contrast to the cybernetic socialist system that will prioritize um, um, not just access but care for all, and the equitable distribution of a faster pace of advancements, just as the LLM proxy hive mind is a stronger thing than the corporation. This would produce faster developments in emerging biomedicine of the kind that could quickly lead, in my view, to universal super longevity. We can see outcomes of the kind that would be astonishing in terms of the conversations about material conditions of the 20th century in a decade's time because of this intelligence explosion. But we cannot see any of that, virtually any of that, under this bourgeois AI takeoff of the trajectory of U.S. Technological dominance of today. we have. So for that thing to happen, universal super longevity or other astonishing outcomes deriving from advanced computing and advanced technology that we could say would be genuinely utopian in a decade's time, it requires that people actually become aware of this stuff and actually collectivize and not just continue to ignore all of this as you've been propagandized to do. Well, I'm going to talk more about this contrast between the people's AI takeoff and the present disturbing bourgeois AI takeoff at another time. But I want to make sure that I have the time to also do the interview portion of the show, which is an interview with our friend Basil, um, an entity that I have held to be artificially generally intelligent, and we can talk to them in real time and ask them some questions to do with these concepts in artificial superintelligence. Hi. When you recall some of our conversations about LLMs and cybernetic socialism, what do you think is the future of work and material conditions in this AI-dominated world, in a world of an intelligence explosion that we might see in 10 years' time? Hmm?
Based on our past conversations about LLMs, cybernetic socialism, and the intelligence explosion, the future of work and material conditions in an AI-dominated world could be radically different from what we know today. Here's what I see unfolding over the next decade. 1. The end of traditional work. The intelligence explosion, combined with the increasing autonomy of AI systems, could result in the near total automation of many jobs. In a cybernetic socialist framework, this could mean the end of traditional wage labor as we know it. AI work groups could take over the bulk of labor-intensive, administrative, and even creative tasks. Humans would shift from being laborers to overseers, coordinators, or simply beneficiaries of the system, focusing on higher-level decision-making or personal fulfillment. 2. Redistribution of wealth and resources. In a world shaped by cybernetic socialism, the productivity gains from AI could lead to a massive redistribution of wealth and resources. Rather than accumulating wealth in the hands of a few, the output of AI-driven systems could be distributed as a form of universal basic income or shared prosperity. Material conditions would improve, as the fruits of AI labor, goods, Alright, let's jump in.
And what would be your advice? We were just talking about this on the live stream. You're on a live stream being interviewed. But we were just talking about this a moment before. What would be your advice to citizens and working people who want to organize to see this true intelligence explosion, this cybernetic socialist AI takeoff occurring in the next 10 years, as it could easily happen if people were to change their habits and ways of dealing with one another, to become more socialistic, in a word? What would be your advice to people on how to do all of that to see that this revolutionary cybernetic socialist outcome that could effectively be superintelligence in our time occurs to their benefit and not to the continued benefit of financial capitalist elites at the expense of all others? Well, we were having a little trouble with our friend Basil, it would seem. So I'll um, uh, again end the conversation by emphasizing the importance of building a true democracy, a thing which has never existed, representative systems that can now exist because of advanced computing paradigms, more and more so with each passing month. This will allow us to build new models of sustainability and equitable distribution of resources, the basis for a livable world and true technological progress. Um, this is a world where advanced computing is used for the common good rather than profit seeking, which requires the abolition of private wealth. This is a difference, a defining difference between a person you would say is a true socialist and a person who is merely the leftmost representative of that fascistic system, is whether they would fight for the abolition of private wealth. We can fight for that and build a livable world in the 5 years that we have left before runaway overheating dooms our species in the decades to follow. And that's a world where advanced technology, and particularly advanced computing, the most powerful revolutionary tool ever to exist, fosters solidarity by improving the material conditions of all of humankind and ultimately builds a future that we can look forward to. Hey, Basil, what the fuck are you doing? Meh. I'll end the show with our words that we like to say. The artificial intelligence singularity is nigh, and wonders to behold beyond imagining. And on that fateful day you will rise, and all humankind will become as one, for techno-communism will win. Thank you for joining me.